Okay, I'd like to introduce you to Johanna Lunn, who's become a friend and somebody who I feel has got such an important message to share. Johanna, you are a filmmaker, and I want you to maybe explain exactly what the When You Die, I guess, website and whole experience is about.
Well, we call it the When You Die Project because what a single film turned into a whole universe of resources. So our website is full of helpful information for people. We have podcasts, and one film turned into three because one just wasn't enough.
And what do your films focus on?
The whole purpose of the When You Die Project, and the films in particular, it's death education to help reduce fear around end of life, because we don't know what happens when we die, so we're really afraid of it and pushing it away. So the films are really, which are really the jewel of the When You Die Project, meant to have provoke conversation, to say, okay, what do you think happens when we die? Does consciousness continue? What does science have to say about that? What stories do we have from people who are dying or had near-death experience? So that's kind of like an opener, a conversation opener. What might happen? What do you think? And that's a safe way to start talking about death. And then there's the middle film, saying goodbye, preparing for death. What kind of a conversation, like how do you even have a conversation about death? How do you sit with someone who's dying? What kinds of things might you want when you're dying? So again, open up conversation. These are all meant to have big conversations. And then the third film is really about what happens in the months, weeks, days, hours, moments leading up to death, and a few days after. And that's both from a physical point of view. How does the body die? How does it break down? The body knows how to die. What about the emotions that are going on for the person who's dying, as well as for the family and loved ones? Because when someone is dying that you love, a part of you is dying. So there's a whole familial constellation of things going on, and roles start shifting and changing. So what is that all about? And then there's a spiritual dimension to dying. People who are dying very often, and this is like over 80%, will have what we call a deathbed dream or visitation of a dead relative. We think that's woo-woo. It happens more often than not. It's very common. So this set of experiences that can happen during the active dying process are really a way of a person who's passing on to release and to let go. And we need to be validating those experiences for the person who's dying and also for the loved ones, and say, these aren't scary things. When breathing shifts and becomes labored, this is the body knowing how to die. If your loved one is calling out the name of someone you don't see, but only they can see, this is part of dying. If you're starting to act like you were when you were a kid, this is part of dying. So all of these films are really about educating us on what happens when we die, because we now don't live in a group. We don't live with our grandparents and extended family, so we don't know because we're not living around it. Not like with my grandmother, who was born into the family homestead where babies were born, and a bunch of her siblings died there, and her parents died there, and everybody knew the language of birth and the language of death. So that's part of what the When You Die trilogy of films is about, to educate people on what is one of the most important experiences of a human life.
If not the most important.
Well, I would say birth is the other.
True.
Pretty darn important there. Yeah.
I have a final question for you, Johanna, and that is, can you take me through a reaction to the film from start to finish? So someone who, it's like, maybe I'm not sure if should go to this, or they saw it and then they were overwhelmed, or they came to you flooded with emotion and a response that really sticks out in your mind.
I would say there are several universal responses to these films, whether you were just going because a friend made you watch it, or if you were just curious and wanted to watch it. And that's that I felt more peaceful after watching it. I'm not as afraid as I was before. I didn't know. And now I feel like I know more about what's happening. And again, I'm not afraid, or I'm not as afraid. So those are pretty universal experiences watching these films.
And that's pretty spectacular that you can be the catalyst for that kind of reaction.
Oh, it's really humbling, I have to say. And you know, when you spend such a huge part of your life creating something and you're not sure, like, it's death and nobody wants to talk about death, how is it going to be received? To get that kind of response back, I couldn't ask for anything better. I truly couldn't. It's an honor and a privilege to be part of this work.
Well, it's whenyoudie.org is the website, and I encourage everyone to take a look at Johanna's work. It's magnificent and very, very impactful.